Velkommen til dagens webinar om IPCEI hydrogen. Det er veldig gledelig å se at så mange følger oss. Og det er veldig gledelig den responsen som vi har fått etter det webinaret som vi holdt forrige onsdag. For de som eventuelt ikke måtte ha fått med seg det, så ligger det ute på hjemmesida til Enova under www.enova.no/IPCEI. Der vil også dette webinaret som vi kjører nå, bli lagt ut i etterkant. Det samme vil presentasjonen som vår innleide konsulent Mark Isabel vil holde. Under webinaret i dag så vil vi også, sånn som sist, ta imot spørsmål i chatten. Det er også mulig å sende inn spørsmål på mail til undertegnede, arve.solheim@enova.no. Og vi vil forsøke å svare på flest mulig av de spørsmålene som kommer inn. Derfor står jeg og Sigmund her, så vi skal moderere den biten der etter presentasjonen til Mark. Så litt mer praktisk, for de som sitter og venter på at vi skal få lagt ut malen for budsjett og analyse av netto nåverdi, så ser det ut til at vi får ut den i dag. Det er vi fornøyd med. Det samme gjelder søknadssenteret vårt, som vil åpne senest på fredag. Alt dette og mer til finner du under www.enova.no/IPCEI. Da setter vi over til Sigmund, som vil introdusere Mark.
And by that, we will also switch to English, since obviously the presentation from Mark will be in English. So thank you, Arve. I will give a brief introduction to Mark, and then we will go on with his presentation. So Mark Isabel, who will be presenting for us today, is a Master of Electrical Engineering and has a PhD in Economics, and has also been a postdoctoral fellow in Innovation Economics. And he has a varied background from both business and R&D until 2009, when he founded European Economics, which is the company he represents today. So he's the founder and director. And European Economics, they raise and secure public funding for industrial companies and their strategic projects. And currently they have 74 clients across Europe with 88 projects, amounting to about 20 billion euros of budget, and has secured more than 7 billion of public funding. And amongst these projects, there's also an extensive list of IPCEI projects, both from earlier projects on earlier IPCEIs and now. So this Mark in European Economics has an extensive experience with the IPCEI scheme, and he will now give a presentation to us on what the IPCEI is, the motivation behind the IPCEI schemes, and more specifically also on IPCEI hydrogen, to help you guys out. So without more ado, over to you, Mark.
Thank you very much. So hello everybody. First of all, I would like to make sure that everybody can see my presentation. Okay, so unless somebody tells me that it's not working, I will start with my presentation. So I'm Mark Isabel, I'm the founder and director of European Economics. And first of all, I would like to thank Enova for giving me the opportunity to share with Norwegian companies and maybe also research organizations and public bodies the knowledge and feedback that we have regarding our participation to preceding IPCEIs. The purpose here today is to share with you some tips about what is an IPCEI and how to prepare yourself and your applications to this IPCEI. So just a quick presentation of the company. So we're a small consulting company, and we have very specialized services, and we support industrial companies to raise public funding for their strategic projects, and also provide legal security for this public funding regarding specifically European regulation on competition and state regulation. We have supported quite a large number of projects. You see 88 projects in 12 years. The activities of this project amount to 21.5 billion euros, and they were funded with 7.1 billion euros of stated or public funding, generally speaking. We have a specialization on the notification process, the so-called European notification process to the European Commission. It could be the EFTA Surveillance Authority for Norway, and we have a 100% success rate when it comes to getting the green light from competition authorities. Now turning to our experience on IPCEIs, we were lucky enough to participate in the first IPCEI 3 years ago on microelectronics. And then we kind of climbed the steps on the stairs of the IPCEI stairs, and we participated in the IPCEI on batteries in 2019 and last year. And starting last year also, we participated now in the IPCEI on hydrogen, and we have now a stock of 24 companies that we support in many member states that want to participate in this IPCEI. And of course, the purpose today, once again, is to share our knowledge and information and feedback from this experience with you. So I will start with the presentation that will last for around 30 minutes, and then of course there will be a round of questions and answers, and I'll be glad to answer your questions. I've been told that there could be an echo in the sound, but I can do nothing. I will not turn my mic off, of course, otherwise you will not be able to listen to me. First of all, I think it's very important for everybody around the table today to understand that according to European competition regulations, stated are forbidden. This is a very general principle. Stated are forbidden. This is according to European Treaty. And of course, it applies also to EFTA, the European Free Trade Association. And Norway is part of this European Free Trade Association, you know that. But there are some exceptions, okay? And the IPCEI is one of the key exceptions to that general principle of interdiction for state aid. And you see that it is a very important exception to this principle of interdiction because it is laid down in the European Treaty. Article 107.3b says that the aid to promote the execution of IPCEIs could be considered compatible with the internal market. Okay, but it's a bumpy road, okay? And we see that there is quite a long regulatory process in order to receive the green light from the surveillance authorities, either ESA or European Commission. So now, what is an IPCEI? Now that we know that IPCEI could be considered as an exception and receive state aid for the companies participating into it. So we have two perspectives here regarding what is an IPCEI. The first one is the political perspective, and I think it's very important to know what it's about. And the second one, of course, is the regulatory perspective. So from the political perspective, what I feel after 3 years of participating in IPCEIs or supporting companies participating in IPCEIs, I feel that we truly have a new and potentially important public policy instrument in terms of European industrial policy. And I think it was missing until IPCEIs came on the table. Of course, we have Airbus. We all know about Airbus. Each time that we have mentioned, we have to think about a successful European project. We mention Airbus, but apart from Airbus, maybe not so many successes have come out. So I really think that IPCEIs could promote European competitiveness, so to say, against Asia or America, and improve the competitiveness of European strategic value chains. The purpose of IPCEI, of course, is to support companies participating in a given strategic value chain and fund their project with public money, either for innovation or environment-friendly project. And for hydrogen, of course, it could be both innovation and environmental protection. They are, by definition, very large projects. So the order of magnitude is several billion euros. Long-term project, around 5 years. This is just standard durations and standard figures. And it puts into play extensive partnership between dozens of companies. Just to mention, the second IPCEI on batteries, that is still pending a decision from the European Commission, has around 50 partners from around 10 member states. So it's a very large project. And the strategic forum on IPCEI that was set up by the European Commission, and that gave its conclusion a little more than 1 year ago, identified 8 strategic value chains as best candidates for IPCEIs, including hydrogen technologies and systems. Now, from the regulatory perspective, so we have to look at the regulation for IPCEI. And from the regulation perspective, an IPCEI, to say it very simple and very bluntly, is any type of project that ticks all the IPCEI eligibility boxes in the dedicated regulation, the so-called IPCEI communication. And of course, I guess that Enova will share this presentation with you, and you have a link here to the IPCEI communication that was issued by the European Commission. It's called Criteria for the Analysis of the Compatibility with the Internal Market of State Aid to Promote the Execution of IPCEIs. And basically, these eligibility criteria are that you have to integrate every individual contribution. So every company participating should be integrated with others in the project. This project, meaning the IPCEI globally speaking at the European level, should provide an important contribution to the European Union's objective in terms of environment, innovation, environmental protection, and so on and so forth. This project should be of wider relevance and application to the European economy or society through positive spillover effects. We'll come back to that because it's part of the fight that you have to prepare to apply. And it should be also important either or both from the quantitative and qualitative point of view. So the main source of soft law is this IPCEI communication from the European Commission, but the European Commission 3 years ago also released a series of non-papers to complement this IPCEI communication for the IPCEI on microelectronics, because it was the first one. So it's not enough to have the general framework. We need also to have a little more complementary rules. And these non-papers, I don't know if they are public, but there is one on antitrust, because of course, competitors on the market could be partners in the IPCEI. So we need to address the issue of their communication within the IPCEI. They cannot communicate on everything, you know that. There is one non-paper on integration, so it relates to this criterion here, integration of individual contributions. What is truly integration? Sorry. One non-paper on proportionality. This is about the fact that the state aid received by each company in the IPCEI should be limited to the minimum required for the company to launch the investment. A non-paper on the research, development, and innovation content, because this is one of the key criteria to be eligible to an IPCEI, that your activities should go beyond the state of the art, so to say, and a non-paper on spillover effects, which is obviously another eligibility criteria that you see here. Now, I would like to share with you a broad representation of what an IPCEI is. And it's important to understand that it has basically 3 interdependent layers. The top layer here that you see is the strategic value chain. And it's been defined by the so-called strategic forum that was set by the European Commission 2 years ago. And you have, of course, several links in a given strategic value chain. So maybe for hydrogen, I will give a representation, my representation, not the true one, about what the strategic value chain for hydrogen could be. And once it's been defined that the hydrogen strategic value chain could be a best candidate for IPCEIs, then there could be several IPCEIs for a given strategic value chains, okay? For example, for batteries, there were 2 IPCEIs on batteries. Okay, so several projects could follow each other in times for the same strategic value chain. Okay, and each project, and when I say project, and when you read project in the regulation, it refers to the integrated project, not to the individual contribution. Each project requires a notification to the European Commission to be approved, to receive the green light from the competition authorities. And then under each project, you have a certain number of individual contributions, okay? it could be, it was 17 partners for the first IPCEI on batteries in 2019. And as I told you, it was over 50 partners, if I remember correctly, for the second IPCEI on batteries. Okay, so the key point here is that you can participate in the required condition for a company to participate in an IPCEI is to be supported by a member state. If you're not supported by a member state, you cannot participate. But if you are supported by a member state, there is no other condition except the regulatory ones, and I will come back to that in the rest of my presentation. Okay, and during this notification process to the European Commission, the IPCEI itself, as an integrated project, requires the drafting of a chapeau text, which is a kind of overarching text describing the whole project, and this is under the responsibility of the leading member state, and this will be Germany, it seems, for this first IPCEI on hydrogen. And then every individual company needs to prepare 3 documents, a text document, the project portfolio, a business plan, a funding gap questionnaire, and a Prodcom analysis, which has the purpose to assess the market share of the company. And these materials will be sent by Norwegian authorities to ESA or the European Commission, I don't know yet. And then they will start the notification procedure with the rounds of questions and answers until the competition authority reaches a final decision. So it's important for you to understand that as long as your contribution, your individual contribution fits into the national strategy, and if you get the support by the Norwegian government, so to say, any contribution in the strategic value chain could be supported. So this is valid from the point of view of the horizontal dimension of the strategic value chain. So once again, this is a very simple representation. It's my representation, maybe not the best one. But as I told you, we now support 26 projects, so I have quite a clear view now of what project could be supported. So for the generation of low CO2 electricity, low carbon content electricity, that could be injected into whatever assets for the production of green hydrogen, basically electrolysis, sorry. And then, of course, everything that is between the production and the consumption of hydrogen, so everything that turns around the handling and transport solutions for hydrogen, storage, pipes, trailers, carriers, and whatever. And then the various usage of mobility, of hydrogen, sorry, either in mobility, in industry, or for energy purposes. Okay, so this is what I call the horizontal dimension. So activities in any step of the strategic value chain could be supported in the given IPCEI. And also for a given step, let's look at the production of green hydrogen. Any, in the vertical dimension, any supplier of either systems or components could be also, could promote activities in the IPCEI. So here I just refer to electrolyzer manufacturers or stack manufacturers or membranes or electrodes or catalysts or companies active in the recycling or whatever. You have other examples here just for the mobility sector, for example. Okay, so you just have to fit into the national strategy to be supported by your member states. Now, let's look at the next step. Once you are supported by a given member state, every member state have to work together to prepare the IPCEI. So let's think of the IPCEI as a puzzle, okay, that needs to tell a story at the European level regarding hydrogen. Every member state, now I think you have here all the member states that would like to participate in the IPCEI. So you have Portugal, Spain, France, Italy, Austria, Germany, the Czech Republic, Belgium, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, and Finland. I don't think, maybe I forget 1 or 2, sorry for that. So they will support some companies. Each company is one piece of the puzzle, so they will put all pieces of the puzzle on the table, and they will say, now we have to tell a story. Okay, so all the pieces of the table will have to be integrated at the end of the day, and the deadline for this will be the start of the pre-notification process to the European Commission or to the EFTA Surveillance Authority, and the deadline, the official deadline now is May this year. So you have 5 months to apply at the Norwegian level, be selected, and then integrate with other players in the IPCEI at the European level to tell the story that will be described in the chapeau text that has to be prepared by Germany. Now, what kind of activities could be promoted in the IPCEI? this is in the regulation. Okay, so there are basically two types of activities with 3 legs, so to say, that could be promoted. Points 21 and 22 in the IPCEI communication relate to innovation, and innovation has 2 legs. First of all, the R&D activities, okay, and you see that they must be of a major innovative nature to be eligible to public funding, or constitute an important added value in terms of RDI in the light of the state of the art. Okay, so for the file that you will have to prepare for the competition authority, you will have to prove that your project, if you want R&D activities to be supported, have to go beyond the state of the art, the worldwide state of the art. So you have to describe the state of the art and prove that you will go beyond that. And once you complete your R&D activities, you can, let's imagine we talk about an electrolyzer manufacturer. You want to produce very innovative electrolyzers with innovative production methods. Once you have the main results from the R&D phase, you go on the market. So you go on the industrial scale, okay? So you will invest into maybe a manufacturing line to produce these electrolyzers. It will be automated and to produce a very large electrolyzing platform or whatever. This is called first industrial deployment, okay? And the key point here is that when you will turn the key of this manufacturing facility, obviously it will not work, or it should not work. It will not work because it is innovative. So there will be sparks and cracks and smoke everywhere. So you have to solve technical issues on the manufacturing line. And as long as you have to solve these technical issues, you are into the so-called first industrial deployment phase, and the cost of the manufacturing line will be eligible. Okay, so you have 2 legs for the innovation, R&D and FID. And then there is another type of activity that could be promoted, and this is new for the IPCEI and hydrogen because it was not in microelectronics or batteries. And this is the point 23 of the regulation. It's called EET, Environmental, Energy or Transport Projects. So we have no feedback for that. So what I will tell you is just what we think would fit into the regulation and would be accepted by the competition authority, but there is no guarantee. So we think that, for example, a company, an oil and gas company that will invest, that operates refineries and that would like to produce green hydrogen for the refinery to substitute gray hydrogen, they will invest into electrolyzers, okay? And we think this investment will be eligible to IPCEI funding according to point 23 of the regulation, because it will cost a lot in terms of CapEx and OpEx, more than carbonized solution. And this additional cost that you will bear as an investor into electrolyzers is just to protect the environment and to contribute to the European Union strategy regarding CO2 reduction. So most probably the investment in CapEx would be eligible to IPCEI funding according to point 23 of the regulation. Okay, and you could, as a company, cherry pick any type of activities in the 3 building blocks, either R&D and FID or EET. So here is a representation of a typical project that starts with R&D, and the cost of R&D would be eligible. Okay, once you have the main R&D results, you could invest into a facility that protects the environment, and we think the CapEx here would be eligible under point 23 of the regulation. And then you start the facility, and it does not work because it's innovative. Let's talk maybe about also innovative electrolyzers or whatever. And for some months or for some years, you will have to solve technical issues. There will be a strong R&D content on the manufacturing line, and the cost will be eligible under point 22 of the regulation, first industrial deployment. And once you have solved all the technical issues on the manufacturing line, okay, the costs are non-eligible anymore. You go into mass production commercialization, and this is running with your own money, not with public money. So now what's interesting is that these eligible costs here under IPCEI rules could be funded up to 100% with public money. What does it depend upon? Of course, on the size of the eligible costs for R&D, EET, and FID, and or EET, but also on the business plan of the project. Okay, so you have here a representation of, this is the total cost of your project. Okay, part of the costs are eligible because they relate to R&D, EET, and or FID. Part of the costs are non-eligible, basically the mass production costs. Okay, and for eligible costs, some of them could be funded through state aid, through IPCEI state aid, and some of them you will have to fund by yourself. Okay, and the maximum ratio here depends on the net present value of the project. It has to be negative. It does not mean that it's a bad project. It means that, to refer to an example I gave previously, a company will invest into electrolyzers to produce green hydrogen, and this is very costly. Okay, this is why the NPV of the project is negative. It's more costly to use green hydrogen than gray hydrogen today. Maybe it will not be in the future, but today it's more expensive, so the project NPV is negative, and this is why you could receive state aid for your project. Just to share with you here the ratio, so it could be up to 100%, but usually it's not 100% of eligible cost. For microelectronics, it was around maybe 35%, 30 to 40%, because the product life cycle in microelectronics is very short, so there is a very strong profitability of capital intrinsically. So the ratio was around 30 to 40%, but for batteries, including because there is chemical in the batteries and the qualification times for the chemical sector are much longer than for microelectronics. And here the ratio was not up to 100%, but around 60 to 70%. And according to the first experience that we have supporting companies for hydrogen, we see that the ratio of state aid to eligible cost is even a little bit higher than for batteries, up to maybe 70 to 80%. This is not a direction that I give. This is just a feedback that we have from previous projects that we support. So now let's turn to specific regulatory requirements for IPCEI state aid. So I explained to you that here the ratio of state aid to eligible costs will be basically defined by the project negative NPV. So you will require state aid in order to reach some form of profitability that is sufficient for you to invest into the project. And the competition authorities say that the normal profitability target that you should aim at is the company's weighted average cost of capital, the WACC. Okay, so this is related also to the clawback mechanism and to the proportionality of state aid that is required in IPCEI. It's a bit technical, but I have to share that with you. For the IPCEI on batteries, the European Commission, the competition authority, said, okay, guys, you will receive money from the government to run this project. And we have a business plan that shows that you have a negative NPV. And this is why you can receive state aid. But when you will execute the project, it could be that the business is twice or 3 times as big as what you expected beforehand. And maybe the NPV will not be that negative. So maybe you will receive too much state aid. In that case, you will have to repay part of the state aid to the member states. Okay, so this was first applied for the first IPCEI on batteries in 2019. And most probably it will be applied again to the IPCEI on hydrogen. So the principle is agreed upon by the member state, but what has to be defined and or improved is the concrete drafting of this so-called clawback mechanism, and we don't have any feedback yet since it was first defined for the IPCEI on batteries. Another regulatory requirement I already mentioned is the so-called spillover effects. So I recall here the point 17 of the IPCEI communication. Okay, and what are spillover effects? It is commitments that every partner in the IPCEI must take to disseminate the results of the project. So it's clearly understandable for R&D, for example. Once you get R&D results, okay, you have to disseminate the results of the R&D project through, for example, conferences, publications, seminars, knowledge transfer to third parties, supporting PhDs or postdoc fellowships, etc., etc. Okay, and the key point here is that all this regulatory procedure is about competition on the market. If you receive state aid, you will receive an advantage over your competitors to participate in the market. So the competition authorities want to make sure that they strike a balance between the risks in terms of distortion of competition related to the fact that a given company will receive state aid. Okay, maybe it will be a very big company on the market and it will have a very large market share. So receiving state aid will maybe reinforce its position on the market. So in that case, the competition authority will require that this given company commits to a lot of spillovers Okay, and these spillovers have to be directed not to the companies in the IPCEI, but to other companies, to other sectors, and to other member states than the one that participate in the IPCEI. Okay, so the spillover commitments also provide some form of protection against lawsuits that could be attempted by third parties that do not participate in the IPCEI. And the balance has to be struck, and it will be assessed by the competition authorities. Now let's turn to the role of public authorities. They have a key role in the IPCEI overall process. They have a key role for the preparation of the IPCEI because they talk with the European Commission to prepare the IPCEI, with other member states, with local authorities, and with companies that want to participate. They have a key role for the application because they are issuing the calls, they are assessing the applications, they will select the participants and decide how much funding they should put on the table to support these companies. And then they have a key role when every IPCEI and every individual contribution in the IPCEI will have to be notified to the competition authorities because they are the ones responsible for the notification. Okay, so they support, they coordinate, and they notify the IPCEI to the competition authority. Let's turn now to this regulatory procedure with the competition authorities. It's quite a clear organization, okay? It's the member state, as I just told, that is responsible for the notification of the state aid that it gives to every company that it supports in the IPCEI. So he is the one, the member state, that will talk with DG Competition in the European Commission or with the EFTA Surveillance Authority, okay? But the competition authority, in order to make its decision regarding the compatibility of state aid and the eligibility of the IPCEI, needs information about the project, the company, and the market. And this information is not the member state that has information, it's you, the company, the beneficiary of state aid. So you have to prepare the file, okay? And here is where we can support you, of course. You have to prepare the file for the regulatory procedure, share the file with the member states, they will send it to the competition authority, and then there will be a round of questions and answers with the member state. The member state will share the questions with you, and you will prepare the answers with our support, share the answers back to the member states, and they will share the answers to the European Commission. Until the competition authority can be sure that the money that you receive and the project that you propose and your position on the market ticks all the compatibility boxes in the regulation. Okay, so they just here, the regulatory process is just to make sure that it's truly an IPCEI and that the state aid that you receive is compatible with the internal market because it's proportionate, necessary, it has an incentive effect, it allows you to make additional efforts, and the distortions of competitions are not too big and they are compensated by spillovers. Okay, so unless they are sure that all these boxes are ticked in the regulation, they will ask questions again and again and again. Our feedback from previous experience is that there are between 80 and 100 questions for every company, and that you need to draft another 100 pages to answer these questions. And these questions come in 2 or 3 batches. Now we come close to my conclusion. I would like to share with you an up-to-date timeline for this IPCEI. So everything started 1 year ago. For example, France issued its call for expression of interest 1 year ago in January last year. And many member states, or the ones that were represented on the map before, went through their call for expression of interest. Now it's Norway here. Okay, so we are somewhere here. Depending on the national regulation, you can start the project just after you applied for state aid, but this has to be discussed at the Norwegian scale. I don't know what is the national regulation in Norway for that, but in France, for example, the call was closed on June 30th, and the companies could start the project on July 1st, not before. If you start before the application, for sure you will not receive state aid, it will not be compatible. So you have to wait to apply for state aid first. In Norway, this will be on February 1st. And we're still waiting for Germany to issue its call, and Germany wants to be the leader, so it's a bit difficult that we've been waiting for so long for Germany to come into the play. And after Germany will have, as a leading member state, will have open and close its call, there will be this coordination at member state level, putting all the pieces of the puzzle together in order to tell a global story at the European level regarding the hydrogen industry and strategic value chain. once the integration will be completed, the pre-notification to the competition authorities could start. And now we have an official deadline for that. It's May 2021. Okay, and then the regulatory process will start. It's called the pre-notification first. This is the question and answer process. And once the pre-notification comes to an end, there is an official notification, and 2 months after this notification, the competition authority will take the decision. In an optimistic scenario, the decision could come in December this year, but I don't really believe in that because the pre-notification process here depends on the number of participants. For the IPCEI on battery number 1, there were 17 participants and it took 6 months. But for the IPCEI on battery number 2, there were over 50 participants and it took 1 year, 13 months actually. Okay, so I rather expect that the regulatory clearance will be received in 1 year, early 2022. And only after you receive the regulatory clearance, you can receive state aid or money for the state to fund this project. Now let's come to a conclusion slide. And after we'll open the round of questions and answers with you. And Nova will do that, of course. So we have a very strong learning process because IPCEI on microelectronics was the first of a kind. Batteries 1 was the second, batteries 2 was the third. But we see that the rules that are applied are still moving a little bit. And so this is not easy to handle. We need some form of adaptability, but nevertheless, we have a very strong knowledge and information for previous experience, and I wanted to share most of them with you today. The second lesson is that you can choose the activities that you would like to promote: R&D, first industrial deployment, investment into environmental friendly projects. As long as they fit into the national strategy, the Norwegian national strategy, you could receive support by the national authorities and then move on to the regulatory process. It's up to you. It's your own project. Of course, I did not mention that in the presentation, but you could look for complementary public funding sources, not only IPCEI, but also maybe European funding, such as Innovation Fund. This is possible to complement the two. It needs some kind of financial engineering, smart financial engineering, but it's possible. Overall, the process is quite long. You see that France started 1 year ago, and there are many stops and goes because France closed its call in June last year, but and we've been waiting for Germany to enter into place since that time. As soon as Germany will have closed its call and select its champions, there will be another go, and we'll be into a kind of rush mode. And well, we see that hurry up is the dominant project management tool for the regulatory process. Another important point is that the procedure to the competition authorities should be anticipated as soon as possible. And in particular, it should be very important that you can gather proofs that the state aid is necessary for you to launch this investment. Okay, so there should be a clear decision by the executive committee in the company that this investment cannot be made without public funding because it has negative NPV. Okay, and this should be a proof that could be used to convince the competition authority that the state aid is really necessary for this project. Regarding the state aid amount, so I told you that it could be between 35% for microelectronics up to 60% for batteries and maybe more than that for hydrogen. It depends on the project NPV, but the calculation of NPV is just an Excel file. We all know that. What we see from the previous experience is that the ceiling or the maximum amount of state aid rather relates to the definition of eligible cost, and specifically of FID eligible cost, because this FID phase is based on the fact that there will be technical issues on the manufacturing line, and you will have to define how long this phase will last and what will be the transition to the mass production phase, and this is a bit difficult to handle. So usually the competition authorities challenge you on the duration of the FID phase. And last point, the spillovers, so the compensation that you will give to compensate for the distortions of competition, has been a bit, sorry to say that, but a bit messy in the previous experience because it went into every direction. We didn't really know what the competition authorities expected as spillovers. But now we think that the smarter way to address this spillovers issue is to prepare a work package in your project that bundles all the dissemination actions, just like you would do when you participate to a kind of Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe project on R&D. There is a specific work package for dissemination actions and this would make the spillovers very clear. Thank you very much for listening, and now I give the floor to Renova to manage the question and answer process. Thank you.
The first question we have got is what degree is it required that a company finds partners through the coordinated matchmaking process in order to take part in this process? Mark?
Thank you, Albert, for this question. It is an absolute requirement. A company. Okay. A given company cannot receive funding if it is isolated. Okay, so it's an absolute requirement that in order to receive public support that will be declared compatible by the competition authorities, it's an absolute requirement that this company is integrated to other companies in the IPCEI. Any company cannot stay isolated in the IPCEI. If it's isolated, it will not be able to receive public money when the competition authorities will assess the file. So a way to integrate, I will take the example I used before, typically of an electrolyzer manufacturer that is a partner in the IPCEI, and an oil and gas company that wants to invest into electrolyzers to produce green hydrogen for the refinery. The kind of connections that could be made between the two is that the electrolyzer manufacturer will have a FID phase where it will start the manufacturing process, which is innovative, to produce innovative electrolyzer platforms, and this will be difficult for him. So it will produce a few first electrolyzers out of the innovative manufacturing line, and these electrolyzers will be transferred to the oil and gas company and put onto the refinery to start producing green hydrogen. And what could happen, and the typical type of link that could make that the two pieces of the puzzle fit into the IPCEI, is that the electrolyzer manufacturer will come onto the site of the refinery to start the electrolyzers and to try to make them work in the environment of the refinery. Okay, so you see that the FID phase of the two companies will be integrated because the refinery will use the first electrolyzers that come out of the manufacturing line of the electrolyzer manufacturer. This is a typical example.
Okay, thank you, Mark. We hear now that the sound is back and it's good, so we hope this will continue. So sorry for the technical problems, but we do our best here from Trondheim. I'd like to bundle two questions on the spillovers. So there's a spillover and a ripple effects requirement in the IPCEI. So does this requirement prohibit companies from patenting things that come out from the IPCEI projects? First, and then following on that, could you, from your experience from the previous IPCEIs, could you give some concrete examples of spillovers you have seen, which could be examples for projects in the hydrogen IPCEI?
Okay, thank you for this question. The answer is quite clear from previous experiences. Once again, microelectronics and batteries were only about supporting innovation, so R&D and FID. There were no EET activities. And we think that EET activities is not a problem regarding spillovers because by definition, investing into environmental friendly projects is about contributing to the production of a public good, which is environmental protection. So we think this is not, there are no spillover requirements regarding EET. So turning to R&D and FID, there were basically three types of commitments that a company could take. The first commitment is related to R&D, and it's the results that are not protected by intellectual property. And I already referred to that in my presentation. It could be participating in conferences, supporting PhDs or postdoc fellowships. It could be publishing the results in scientific journals, and so on and so forth. This is quite straightforward, and I don't think companies have a problem with that. The second type of spillover commitments are spillover related to the R&D results that are protected by intellectual property. So typically patents, the patents that you are referring to. And here, the companies should commit to some form of openness regarding their patents. And the most important commitment that we could see is when a company had a strong market position. So this strong market position had to be compensated by strong spillovers. And the competition authority required that this company commits to grant licenses to, so to say, any third party that would want to use the patents on the so-called FRAND condition. FRAND means fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory conditions. Okay, so this is a typical requirement, regulatory requirement that could be put on patents that a company commits to grant licenses to third parties on FRAND conditions. And of course, this has to be proportionate to your position on the market. So for small companies, these commitments most probably will not be necessary. And the third type of spillovers don't really relate to patents, but they are spillovers in the first industrial deployment phase. So once again, when you solve the technical issues on the manufacturing line, you will learn something, how to solve these issues, and this should be shared through any type of commitment with third parties. For example, you could, but this is something the companies are often reluctant to, but you could have startups come and see how on your industrial site, how you solve the technical problems for them to learn something out of your own FID phase.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I'm trying to bundle up a couple of questions here myself. There is a couple coming in through email focused on the size of projects. So first part of the question is, could a startup company apply for an R&D project to develop a component within the strategic value chain? Or is the aim to support larger projects? And another part of the same question is, I mean, it's clear that IPCEI is focusing on very large projects. So is there a minimum size of the individual sub-projects that would be part of an IPCEI? Mark.
Thank you very much for this question. It's also a very important question. So there is no regulatory limit on the size of the project, either for small projects or for large projects. So from the regulatory perspective, when I refer to projects here, I don't talk about the IPCEI, globally speaking, because this one has to be big, but I'm talking about the individual contributions, of course. I think this was your question. So just to give you concrete figures, we at European Economics supported projects from several million euros. I think it was around 3 million euros. This was the smallest one we supported. And the largest one we supported had 4 billion euros of expenses. Okay? So you see it's a very large, a very broad spectrum in terms of size. This is up to the company's decision and up to the government's decision to support a given project or not. Since the IPCEI is quite a complicated Lego, once you participate in an IPCEI, there are, I think, a lot of coordination costs, okay? Because you have to partner with a lot of companies, you have to go through that regulatory process, you have to manage the public funding with the national government and so on and so forth. You have to report every year. So it does not make a lot of sense to go for a small project. And big projects, very big projects, only very large companies can handle. So it's up to the company's decision to go either small or big or in the medium range. And it's up to the governments to decide whether they want to support small project or rather large project or any type of project. The standard, just to finish my answer, the standard size is around, is large. It's around 100 million euros of expenses for a given individual contribution.
Thank you again, Mark, for a very good answer. Regarding the notification process, you referred to DG competition throughout your presentation. But we in Norway, we will have to relate to ESA. And this is the first time that this will happen, that Norway will participate into an IPCEI. What is your take on that process, the coordination between DG competition and ESA for the notification on processes? No, on projects, sorry.
This is a very new issue, so I don't have a precise answer. I can only have wishes, and my best wish would be that the two authorities coordinate very tightly to run the two regulatory processes in parallel, to exchange information, because it would be necessary to prove that the companies supported in Norway will be integrated with companies supported in the European Union. So if they don't exchange the information, this will not be, we won't be able to prove that. And also in terms of timing, since this IPCEI will be a single integrated project, it will fly only if both the European Commission, DG Comp, and ESA take the decision. Okay, so if one takes a decision in December and the other one in May, 5 months later, everybody will have to wait until the latest decision. This is an important point, not only regarding ESA and European Commission, but regarding a given notification. It's not an individual race, it's a collective race, meaning that if your company goes very quickly through the regulatory process and crosses the finish line, you can rest and wait until the slowest one goes through the finish line. So it's really no use running because it's a collective race, not only for the companies, but also for ESA and the European Commission. So I only have wishes here.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. I'm trying to bundle up and combine questions from the chat and from email. So the last question that came in is, if a project is approved by the Norwegian government, that is by Enova, might it still be disapproved by the EU? And try to combine your answer to that with how much contact will there be between the different projects, the puzzle pieces throughout the project? How is the dialogue coordinated? And I think maybe this also goes on through the project as the project is carried out, so to say. But try to combine that with how the projects are put together and yeah.
Yes, thank you, Ave, for this question. So for these two questions, for the first one, well, I first would like to remember that we at European Economists have a 100% success rate, meaning that every company that was selected by the government at the end of the day received green light by the European Commission. This is not only to say that we are good advisors. This is also that the IPCEI has a very strong political support from the member states, from the European Commission, and unless the company goes into a very bad direction regarding the dossier that has to be prepared for the competition authority, there is an important probability that at the end of the day, it will be into the IPCEI and it will receive a clearance. Okay, it's just, once again, once you are selected, when the company is selected by the government, the purpose is to prepare a dossier that proves to the competition authority that every box in the regulation has been ticked by the company. Okay, so it's a difficult job. Okay, but if you understand the rules clearly and if you are well supported, then I think the risk is really low that you don't get approval at the end of the day. Regarding your second question, this is also an important one. You have to keep in mind that cooperation and links between the company has to evolve into two parallel worlds. There is the true industrial world, and of course, an oil and gas company that owns a refinery truly has to buy electrolyzers from an electrolyzer manufacturer to produce green hydrogen. Okay, so the connections will have a real dimension, technical dimension, industrial dimension, and so on and so forth. And the second parallel work stream is the regulatory process. And here you have to truly prove that a given company's project will be integrated with others. The best is when the two work streams run in parallel and when you commit to make connections to companies that you really need to work with. And in that case, the execution of the project will be aligned on what you described during the regulatory process. Now, to be completely transparent, we had the opportunity to discuss with some companies that we supported in the IPCEI on microelectronics. This is just to share some information with you. No general rule or general lessons from the previous IPCEIs, but this was a French company. And I said, so how was the collaboration working? And the guy said, oh, we had very strong, very nice collaborations thanks to the IPCEI with other French companies. I said, but what about German companies? And he said, not that much. Okay, so of course there could be gaps between what you commit to and what is truly executed in the project. But don't forget that the member states and the companies should not forget that you need to have yearly reports, okay, to say, okay, this year we plan to do this. This is what we actually did. There will be some gaps for sure, and you have to explain the gaps. Okay, so if you said that you would work with some companies and you really don't do that, then you would become an isolated company. Okay, this is not what you have to explain during the regulatory process, and maybe this could put the company at risk regarding the compatibility of the data that it will receive. Sorry.
Thank you again, Mark. We have a question regarding co-financing. You mentioned in your presentation that could be a good opportunity, for example, the Innovation Fund. So the funding for the IPCEI is national funding, and in Norway that will be from Enova. But could you elaborate on the possibilities on other European funding, if you have any more insight or things you could share on that topic?
My answer would be twofold. First of all, just talking about the state aid, the IPCEI state aid so far, it's important for the member states or for Norway and the company that will be supported in Norway to understand that there needs to be some form of alignment or coherence between the theoretical state aid amount that the company will receive, and this will be calculated with an Excel file, a cash flow analysis. And once again, we all know what that we can produce any figure out of a cash flow analysis, so to say. And the state aid amount or the public support that will actually be provided to the company. We have the companies in some IPCEIs had some bad experience because during the regulatory process, there is a figure about the state aid requirement in the dossier. The competition authority will give its approval for this figure. And once the regulatory process was completed, maybe the member state will say, oh, sorry, we don't have that much money. Of course, this is very bad for everybody. So there should be some form of alignment between the actual money that the company will receive and the one that is put in the file for the competition authority. And what is important here is that this amount in the file for the competition authority is a maximum state aid amount, meaning that if let's talk about France, if the government says, okay, you can receive 100, but the government, we can give you only 50. This means that the company can go to other public funding bodies in France, either agencies like Enova or regions or whoever, public bodies can fund the project and say, okay, we receive only 50 from the government, but we can receive up to 100, so we can receive more state aid for this project. This is just for the state aid part. Now for the complementing IPCEI state aid and European money, the rules are that the maximum intensity that applies is the one that is the highest between the national the state aid regulation and the European regulation. And since for IPCEI the maximum amount is 100%, it means, this is just a theoretical rule, we have not put that into practice, but it means that theoretically speaking, if you have 60% of your eligible costs being funded by IPCEI money, you could go look for 40 complementary % to European funding. But it's not that simple because we saw some of our customers wanted to complement IPCEI funding by Innovation Fund. And one technical problem here is that the eligible costs for the innovation fund are not the same than the eligible costs for the IPCEI funding. So we need to have some very smart financial engineering to see how to best complement state aid and European funding, for example.
Thank you very much, Mark. I see that our time has passed. The hour is over. It's clear that we could have listened to you for longer time. Thank you very much for a good presentation and for your elaborate answers. To the rest of you, I would like to thank you for attending this webinar. We have a couple of questions that we haven't answered. We will try to do so, and we will publish the answers in our frequently asked questions part on our website. So just stay tuned to our website, and there will be more information coming up. So thank you very much, and goodbye.